I think the topic today is Lightning for Plebs. And in particular, those who've been paying attention, the PlebNet has exploded, adding something like 13,000 public nodes to the network, tons of new capital, a bunch of new energy. So we're talking about, that group in particular. And I think, we wanted to start off the conversation with definitions to make sure we're talking about the same thing. So let's just go down the list. What is a pleb in the context of the Lightning Network?
Cool. So a pleb is, in my opinion, is basically a Bitcoiner or someone who's Bitcoin curious that wants to learn as much as they can and do what they can to participate in the network in some way. Not your super OG billionaire sort of Bitcoiner, but just like the person that heard about it from a friend, decided to learn about it and get into it and join all of our fun communities and talks and stuff all over the internet, Telegram, Clubhouse, Twitter, and learn as much as possible. So that's my definition.
I would just add that a pleb is on the same level as any other provider or company or enterprise on a P2P decentralized network. So we're all equal on it. And so it's someone that can play the same game and work on the same side.
I think we're all plebs. There is no distinction. You said it's the beauty of Bitcoin.
Yeah, and I also think that, and we were talking about this earlier, Nate, that pleb has been used as a negative connotation in the past, as rulers look down on the plebeians and say, that they're serfs, but we've flipped it on its head and said that now the plebs are the ones with the power because, all we're doing is running a node, but that's just as powerful as any nation state, so.
Amazing. And so let's just riff on that, starting at Dread and coming back this direction. Why has this been, why do we think 2021 has been the year of the pleb for Bitcoin and for Lightning?
Yeah, I think it's organic, honestly. It could have been, 2020 or 2022 or whenever plebs kind of just woke up, but there was no, in my opinion, no ignition or no fire that started. I think curiosity happened over social media. And people just began wanting to know more. That hunger for curiosity, the hunger for knowledge, just almost hit a tipping point. And we just happened to find a really cool name to label it as, which is Plebs and PlebNet and Pleb Education, and it seemed to have stuck. So I think that as we go forward, in 2021 and beyond, we're gonna see people that you can consider to be plebs becoming huge in the space. And you might not want to call them plebs anymore if they're as big as Facebook, but they will still, as long as they hold the same values that we hold dear, they will still consider themselves to be plebs.
Yeah, maybe also the maturity of the tools. Like we have the right set of tools now to start having something roughly usable.
Yeah, the self-host nodes at home, right? Like the Raspberry Blitz, the Umbrels, the MyNodes, the Nodls, Start9s, all of them. Like it's much easier to run these softwares at home, and it's a matter of following certain instructions and getting it set up. Whereas in 2020, it may have been a little bit rougher on the edges. 2019, the same thing. So I think as it progresses, it will become even easier, right, to run these sorts of servers at home.
Yeah, and just to add all that, I would say that there's a lot. It's a lot easier to find communication channels with other people to get information from, and we're all passionate about this as a hobby and maybe in some cases a career. And anyone who has any questions, no matter if we've heard it 100,000 times, we're still just as excited to answer those questions. So we're really open to anyone trying to hop in and being like, yeah, I've heard about Lightning, maybe I've used it on Blue Wallet or something, but I want to know a little bit more, and just sort of finding those Telegram groups or Twitter and DMing any of us or whatever, and we'll get you going.
Yeah, and I think a key part of that is, the tools have gotten I wouldn't, maybe not even necessarily really good, but just much, much better, right? I'm curious, we could go back down the line. What are, you think, some of like the key tools for the plebs? What are some of the if it's libraries, if it's hosted nodes, et cetera, like what are some of the key things that are really making this stuff work?
Yeah, so my first node was the Raspberry Bolt. I don't know if any of you guys remember that, but it's still being updated by an awesome Bitcoiner named Staticus. But he gives you the rundown on how to build a node on a Raspberry Pi with command line, like start to finish. So it's an educational experience, right? But over time, people got the idea where, hey, well, let's make sort of like a smartphone style app system for your node, right? So that's where like my node came out, and Raspberry Blitz, similar to that, came out, and then Umbrel and everything. So I think that has really helped propel the people that want to learn more about it, but are a little bit more sort of adverse to the command line stuff, to actually make a really big dent on the network in a positive way, obviously, and participate and learn how Lightning works, which is actually much deeper the more you get into it.
I would say developer experience was dramatically improved, whereas before you had to be very familiar with command line tools and understand bash scripts and whatnot. If you've ever run an Umbrel or run Citadel or a MyNode, it's you're physically clicking buttons on an interface. If any person can do that, so the improvement on DX developer experience was pretty dramatic from 2020. You could spin up a node right now in a few clicks in 15 minutes, right?
And as I said in the other panel, I think BTC Pay Server made an incredible job of making Lightning easy to use, and also tools like RTL. Like, I don't know a single person who would be using LND without it today. So.
I think one of the underlying technologies that we really seem to love is the Raspberry Pi itself. Like, the ease of setup of a Raspberry Pi, where you can have my grandmother, setting up a Raspberry Pi and plugging it in now with an SD card, makes the barrier for entry for people who don't like command line and don't want to solder anything and don't really feel like they're qualified enough to buy things on Newegg and put together a laptop. This makes it easy for them. And it is for children to put together a Raspberry Pi. So I think that made this a huge lubrication for setting up nodes.
Yeah, for sure. And it's incredibly important for the Lightning Network to retain the properties of decentralization and privacy, et cetera, that the barrier to entry to running a node, allocating capital to the network is as low as possible, right? It needs to be completely permissionless to be able to do so. So it's really exciting seeing this growth. I'm curious, with all this growth, what are some things that you're looking out for as we go into next year? What are like some hard things right now that you think, by maybe this time next year will be automated or will be, there'll be better tooling around?
Channel management, please.
I'm working on it.
Automation around channel management. That will solve tons of problems. We have a full-time job at ZEBEDEE for someone who's automating channel management. And trust me, it's a full-time job. So if we can help folks that don't have the time, the capital to deploy, and if you're opening Lightning channels, you're deploying that capital, and then after a week or 2 weeks, you realize that capital is not being used correctly or well, you want to claim that back and you want to open new channels, right, and redeploy it somewhere else. If software can do that for you, that's very powerful. And so if we can, again, by clicking a button, you can say, hey, autopilot, right, or auto channel management. All of a sudden, all of the folks in PlebNet are now perfect, efficient deployers of capital.
And on top of that, any visualization tools for channels. Like we run hundreds of nodes, and sometimes it's very hard to keep track of what's going on.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think that developers, and I already know a few that are working on some ways to not only show you what's happening on your node in an easily to understand visual way, but also to sort of give you ideas on how to use that information And automation is great, but there's a lot of times where there's information, then you have to make a decision in one way or the other. And just having that data plus your options, I think is really going to help in the future.
Yeah, two things. One, on top of channel management, also being able to know how to choose a correct peer for a new channel. I think the boss score right now is kind of all over the place. But if we find a way to improve that, it would be great. And also, since most people are running their nodes over Tor, it would be great to have a way to either improve the performance of Tor or have an alternative option that is just as good as Tor. But if we're all using Tor right now, it'd be great to have Tor more reliable or faster. I don't know if that means having more exit nodes, not exit nodes, more what's the other node?
Yeah, I guess moving out of Tor is something very important, because Tor was never designed for long persistent connections, and that's exactly what we're doing. So if one node, Tor node in the chain dies, your connection drops, and many of the times there is no reconnection happening after that. So.
Yeah, we definitely have seen, like at Lighting Labs, especially with our pool product, that Tor nodes, unfortunately, it's a problem. So those are all excellent answers. I'm really curious, kind of on the other side, specifically because so many of these nodes with real dollars now, or real sats, I should say, apologies, real money now allocated to them are on these Raspberry Pis. And many folks up here run kind of professional lighting services. What are some things that some plebs should be on the watch out for to keep themselves safe, keep their funds safe? What are kind of some things that they should just be aware of as this hardware gets a year old, 2 years old, et cetera?
I'll give a couple tips, I guess. I would recommend setting a minimum channel size. I think anyone that's opening up a small channel with you should be considered suspicious, because it's weird seeing some random 20,000 sat channel open with you. So consider setting a min chan size, and also consider when you start feeling comfortable to experiment with a very powerful command line tool. If you're running L&D called Balance of Satoshis, there's a really cool Telegram bot integration with that automatically gives you your channel backup every time there's a change to one of your channels to your Telegram, which takes a lot of the annoyance of keeping your channel backup, updated.
Yeah, actually, it goes a little to the previous topic, like some advanced firewall / whitelist, blacklist system for channels opening and closing. It wasn't malicious, but we had one guy opening tons of channels to each of one channel to each of our nodes at some point, make some map of the lighting network. And actually, this node was running some very alpha version of LND and wasn't routing properly. But all the transactions were going into that node, so we are failing all the transactions, and we had to kick him out. And the only way we can filter who is opening channels to us now is by setting the minimum and maximum size to some specific amount. But even that, when you try to open the channel, it spits out the limits, so you can retry with the correct amount. And I lost my other idea.
Yeah. Sorry, if I can just add, I think if you're running, in this case, LND as well, there's a very nifty tool called LND Mon for monitoring. I don't know if it's been baked into any of the Raspberry Blitz of sorts, but we use it at ZEBEDEE extensively, and you get very fine-grained detailed information about each and every HTLC, each and every forward payment. You get really everything that you see happening on your node. And this will help you, again, choose efficient paths for your capital, right? We don't all have an infinite Bitcoin to deploy. So if you're going to open a channel for 10 million sats, you want that to be used. You don't want that just to be parked and locked somewhere. So monitoring tools are very handy for managing your nodes.
I would also add in, if you have a lot of capital that you've deployed on your node, you want to be very careful with the information that you're sharing from that node. So in two different ways. One, if you're connecting your node to other services like Sphinx or what else might need your macaroons, Zeus, you're giving that application access to control your node, and you trust those companies, but just beware that you are opening up the node for a potential vulnerability. And that being said, if you're asking for help, like I was asking JC for help the other day, if you're asking for help, be careful how you're sharing that information, because if someone has your onion route, your onion address, and your macaroon,
Your admin macaroon, you want
your
to keep
admin macaroon,
safe. Yeah.
they control your node, and they can close your channels and drain your funds. So that's one thing to be careful of. And as a noob, you ask a lot of questions and you send a lot of screenshots. So just be careful when you're doing that.
Yeah, one more thing, don't forget that SSDs and SD cards and flash memory in general ages pretty fast when you write on it. And Lightning and Bitcoin node spends its time writing, so monitor your... on most SSDs you can, from the smart tools, you can get the remaining lifetime in percents. On others, you have to make the computation yourself, like it tells you how many blocks it was already reallocating because blocks died. But yeah, like 2 to 3 years is the more or less the lifespan when bad things starts to happen. So.
Very cool. One thing that I've been hoping is an output of this, rise of the plebs and tons of people, getting their hands on nodes and operating them, is, a new wave of Lightning startups that come out of this. I've been really, and I think it's in kind of trickles, it's been happening. I'm curious, if there are, opportunities that you see out there, if there's, I don't know, like different things that you think people plebs should go and try and tackle as problems.
Well, so at Voltage, where I work, we are allowing our customers to host Lightning nodes in the cloud effectively, which might not be the right thing for everybody, but it helps solve a few use cases for people that really cannot be around their node all the time, possibly. So, if your power goes out, you're kind of out of luck if you're out traveling and you won't be able to, connect in or get routes or anything like that, or merchant services and things like that. So there are certain, like you said, companies sort of coming together and hearing that these issues and putting together solutions. And I think that we're going to be seeing more and more of that as we move forward.
Yeah, I would love to see, we talk about Lightning and Bitcoin being trustless, and yet there's a lot of services that, are custodial and sort of serve that, similar to Voltage, like they're hosting things in the cloud for you, instead of you hosting everything yourself. I think I would love to see more hybrid approaches to this. There are things like Greenlight, is that right? Yeah, Greenlight, where from Blockstream, which basically allows you to, like, your node is on the cloud, but you maintain keys on your machine. You still need to be online, and you still need to have the keys, live, hot, etc. But maybe there's a future where there's a hybrid approach where you're trusting some pieces, but you're not trusting all of the pieces to a company or an enterprise. I think that would allow you to maintain your sovereignty with your coins, and still arrive at a always online, reachable, scalable node. So yeah, I'd love to see more hybrid approach. I'm not entirely sure what it looks like, but I think that's a future that we'd like to explore.
Can someone please make a web server plugin that uses 402 payment required?
Mm-hmm. Sorry, that was kind of gross.
I'd love to see more fun in games, to be honest with you. ZEBEDEE is doing a great job so far, and I would love to see a lot more of that with a lot more. I mean, there are big box games out there that people just play addictively night and day. And, I used to be one of those people. So the more games we can get, the more fun, the more comedy, I think the more we'll bring in, curiosity that's not just tech, it's also, pop culture.
For sure, and I think that's actually an amazing segue into what was going to be my next question. Is like one of the really important things that I think about the PlebNet is they made Lightning fun, right? They made it like an enjoyable activity, a community activity. So I think it would be cool just to hear kind of like stories from each of you, and I'm kind of putting you on the spot, just about something like a fun experience that you had with the plebs, with Lightning, something that that you'd look back on and just kind of laugh about.
No fun in Lightning.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing I think about the most is, and a lot of them are in the room with me from PlebNet, are the memes that we came up with. I mean, it really had no true value, and we were really just in there learning on how to manage channels and how to set up nodes, and we ended up with these memes about KYC jelly and girth and KPing nodes because KP killed his node for no reason, KP. And I think that makes that to me was the coalescing of PlebNet. When we all realized that we weren't just there to learn, we were also there to connect and have fun together.
Yeah, I remember like in the late nights, just saying like, well, my node routed this much today, and my node routed this much today, and hey, we're friends and stuff, but our channel's like not doing that well. I think I might close on you. It's like, what? You're gonna close on me? That's all a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's like friendship, but without the trust. Because like D Plus says, it's magic because it's friendship, and I don't have to trust you. I can still take my stats back.
Yeah, I remember waking up one day with a message. So I'm in this Lightning Circles of Fire group, and I'm getting a message in the morning like, why did you close the channels you had? And actually, so my node at home is the one I'm developing on, and some very experimental piece of software just closed all my channels.
Yeah, it's funny how people like kind of take it a little personally when somebody closes a channel and you're like, hey man,
Yeah, when
what
someone
the
you
hell?
know.
Yeah, it's like, we were friends, right?
I mean, if you think about it, you're saying you're not willing to put money towards them. You don't trust them enough to put some money towards them. That's personal.
It's almost worse. It's like you used to trust them, and now you don't anymore.
Right.
I think it's fantastic, and it's something. But that, as I think, like André, you were saying, sometimes you open a channel in a direction and it just ends up not routing. Like it's not. It's more of it's not you, it's me, right? And I just need to point my channel somewhere else. And so I think like as the network professionalizes, maybe there will just be pockets that are more cutthroat and more kind of like economically rational, and then there will be other pockets that are more kind of like community driven. I don't know, like we're in this, in this stage where like we've seen this incredible growth, but still it is hobbyists, right? And so I hope that like we don't lose that, fun and characteristic of the network. But like certainly if this thing gets to where it's billions of dollars worth of capital, right? Maybe like tens of thousands worth of Bitcoin, like probably we're going to see a little bit more ruthless closing of channels and economically minded actors, right? And I think, we're not quite there yet though, right?
And it's going to get a lot more adversarial and a lot more attacks. And Lightning is in its infancy, and we have not seen like sizable attacks from companies, nation states, whatever, right? Whatever attacks are coming, I don't know that we've seen even the beginnings of it. So I hope we're all ready for it.
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I think Shinobi had a good rant on this before when he called us, kids with toys, just playing around with Lightning, because no nation state has really made the true test of, one, the capacity, how much Lightning can handle volume-wise, and two, to your point, attacks. How easy would it be for a bad actor to spin up a bunch of nodes and somehow, find out what's going on, whether it's using analysis to sell your information because now they know where your money's going, or to try and actually intercept it. So I do think that there's a lot of development that's needed on the Lightning Network, which you guys are moving at lightning pace. So, I don't know if we can move any faster, but I do think that we're heading in the right direction. And if a nation state attack does come, just like we've done with Bitcoin, we'll fight, we'll be ready.
Very good. Well, I mean, let's theorize a little bit. I know like one that always, the .eths always point out is the flood and loot attack, right? Which I think is like mostly mitigated by anchor channels. But what are some things that, like, for instance, a country that really doesn't like Bukele and El Salvador, like, what are some things that you think they could do to, like, try and mess with their infrastructure? What would some things you'd watch out for?
Jam all the channels, all of them. Just jam them all. Okay, it's a real thing. You can, channels have limits and HLCs and in flight, and also, there are a couple ways where you can essentially deploy very small very small value payments in terms of, let me rephrase, large volume of payments with very small amounts, and then you can also lock up liquidity on routes by using small number of payments with large amounts. So if we're making a payment through Ryan, and Ryan's node goes offline after the HTLC sent, I now have liquidity stuck on one side, and I can't do anything until it settles, right? Until it cancels or errors out. So imagine an attacker spinning up hundreds of nodes, deploying some capital to the network, and then using some form of scripting to jam a lot of channels. All of a sudden in El Salvador, you can't make a payment through OpenNode to buy your McDonald's, right? Because the channels are jammed or liquidity is not unavailable. So channel jamming is one. I guess spamming and probing is a big one as well. On our nodes, at least, we're seeing. The numbers vary, but any given month is like 50%, 60% are probing payments. And probes are essentially, I'm trying to get an estimate of whether this payment will clear, and I'm trying to get an estimate of the fee that will cost me. So a lot of wallets do this probing mechanism to find out for users, and say, hey, your payment is 1,000 sats, it's going to cost you 10 sats to make this payment, and you send that fake payment across. Once the returns fail back, you now have a very discrete estimate. We're seeing lots of spam in the network, but again, it's in its infancy. What happens if someone is actively trying to spam it, 24/7? I think we have yet to see what it's like.
And there's also a vulnerability in the invoices, right? Like if you give an invoice out, like let's say you're, asking for tips on Twitter, right? Or you put an invoice out on a post, you're showing your information, right? Like they can see your node at that point. So I feel like, what is it, Bolt 12 that might solve that? Mm-hmm. But things like that provide more maybe not. Things that provide more privacy for us would be good to be able to remain anonymous as possible while still conducting your transactions.
Rendezvous routing.
I know,
Let's go.
From your lips to God's ears, man.
Yeah. So right now, a regular Lightning invoice can be decoded, and you can see. Like, imagine that I give you an invoice, you pay it, and you could decode the invoice, and it says that it's actually going to me, right? But if I can give you an invoice where you don't see where the final destination is, that protects your node's privacy, but you still get paid for it. So that's something that hopefully in the future we can get going.
Yep.
Is rendezvous the same as trampoline? No.
Yeah, you give me that fighting words. You're going to get in trouble asking that.
Sorry.
I think like conceptually high level they're the same, but this is the type of thing where it's like the differences are so small but so important that T-Bast and Connor would like get into a fist fight or something. Hilarious. I think all of those attacks are we're the thing that I love about the Bitcoin community is that we're very honest about this type of stuff, and we're continually critically thinking about what are the ways in which this could fail, what are the ways, and thinking about what are the ways that we can protect ourselves against these adversarial environments. Because absolutely, I know it's the protocol developers a lot of the time are kind of like, this is ridiculous that you guys are having fun and making friendship channels and stuff. Like this is this is going to be an adversarial environment, and I think we are aware, but it just hasn't been the case just yet. And so I think kind of to close here, again, this has all been about Lightning for Plebs. I'm curious. The PlebNet now I think is it 1,000 registered nodes, 5,000 registered nodes? Holy shit!
1,000 nodes.
Okay, 1,000 registered nodes, 5,000 users, which is incredible. Where do you think the plebs go from here? Like the individuals. Do you see companies that need to hire Lightning node operators? That becomes a job. Do you see this just continuing as a hobbyist group? Where do you see them going from here?
I think that there are already companies hiring people to manage their nodes for them. And the way that you sort of stand out is by really participating in distributing your knowledge that you're gaining to the wider community. And that is extremely important, especially as you get more and more experience with how your node works. There are nuances that are very deep level, but once you sort of grasp the game of it, that knowledge goes a long way to helping others. A little example is, people don't realize that your peer that you have a channel open with, their health matters, but their peer's health also matters for you too. So keeping an eye on those things and teaching people how to do that, which I would love to do with all of you, but it would take a little bit of time today. But those sorts of things are very important.
Yeah, so I would hope, companies hiring engineers realize that, or at least how we think about it is, we don't try to hire an engineer for a very specific technology. I want to hire a very well-rounded engineer. So if you're a back-end engineer, a front-end engineer, and you are versed in Lightning, that means that that is a net positive for us as a team. You will come up with ideas that we will have not thought of, seen, and explored. So I think regardless of where you are in the space as an engineer, having exposure to Lightning and Bitcoin on the technical level will bring you much further down the line. And then eventually you could move towards doing that full time on said company. So I think there's maybe a couple hundred experts in the Lightning space at this point, and everyone is hired somewhere. So the more experts we can get into these companies, the better.
I think it's no other than any other very specialist piece of software. So we'll have people converging and becoming experts at this. It's a little too much of a moving target to be specialized now, I guess, because like in LND, like the backend tech is changing fast.
Yeah, I know.
And managing Postgres and etcd are totally two different jobs. So yeah.
Looking more internal at PlebNet, I can see it evolving because a lot of us started off, we wanted to learn and we wanted to educate. Like, it was fun showing other people what we've discovered on our own. And so it was like a school almost. And I feel like PlebNet could evolve into an open source school of some sort. I don't really know what it looks like in the future, but I feel like PlebNet itself might actually become careers for people to be professors, adjunct professors or whatever, teaching
That's
Lightning
awesome.
to others.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, I believe, Brianna's holding up a 0 at me because it's no time left, not because we did a 0 job. Great job. Let's give it up for the panelists.